Hello there, magical travellers. Are you ready for adventure? Now, make sure you guys grab yourself a hot drink because we're going to be talking about Epcot and the changes that are announced at D23. Okay, so there's a lot to take in here with regards to Epcot. At D23, they just announced a lot of changes and they hinted to more changes to come. So I think it's pretty safe to say that Epcot as we know it now isn't really going to exist within the next 5 to 10 years. So one of the big things that happened to D23, they did announce that Epcot's going to be going through a bit of a renovation over the next coming years. They specifically talked about how they want to make it more Disney friendly and more family friendly. And I think this alludes to the fact that Epcot traditionally has a lot more entertainment, a lot more offerings that are geared more towards the slightly more mature audience. It seems to have got a bit of reputation for being a bit of a food and drink destination rather than purely a Disney destination. There are a lot of people in the casual fan base that don't really realise that Epcot is actually a Disney park because of the lack of Disney characters or the lack of Disney stories there. So I can see why Disney would want to kind of change that a little bit so that people are more aware that it is a Disney park, but also use it as a prime opportunity to bring more Disney stories to life. Now, I can see why there's a lot of concern for this, and I myself have some concerns. I'm not as precious about the characters coming into Epcot as some of the people. I didn't particularly see a problem with, for example, Nemo coming into the Seas Pavilion. I think that's a great fit and a great way to bring those stories and those adventures to life. I as well wasn't as bothered when Maelstrom became Frozen because even though Arendelle is a fictional location, it's heavily steeped in the Norwegian folklore and art style. So again, I wasn't as sensitive to that as some of the people were and as outraged by it. And as much as I may love Maelstrom, I was also really ready for it to get an update. Granted, I didn't think it was going to get a Frozen update, but I am happy, however, that it did get an update of sorts. So while keeping on the topic of World Showcase, let's kind of talk about, obviously there was a rumour that there was going to be a new country coming to it, which they didn't announce. However, they did announce that the Ratatouille attraction from Walt Disney Studios in Paris will be coming to the France Pavilion in Epcot. I think this is a fantastic tie-in at the end of the day. They're bringing more stories to life, they're bringing the Ratatouille story to life, but they're also further developing the storyline of France and the fact that France is a destination and that's where Ratatouille was set, and I think this is a great synergistic tie, and I don't see this as a major problem. I'm all for more characters coming to World Showcase when the storyline fits. I think there has to be a synergy between the characters and the storyline they're trying to tell with the World Showcase Pavilion. And we have to understand as well that for the younger guests, there is very little to do in World Showcase. People of our generation and upwards really get a lot of Epcot and World Showcase. The fact that we can casually walk around the area, taking a drink, a bit of food, have a conversation with representatives from the countries, and then kind of, go shopping and things like that. They're very mature things. They're things that adults love to do. And KidCot by itself isn't enough to get kids excited and engaged. Now, I know Disney in the past have done things like the Kim Possible adventure where you could go around and give kids things to do in World Showcase, and that was a great step. However, it's very clear to, I think, anybody who's really got their eyes open that World Showcase doesn't offer a lot for the younger guest. So with the characters coming into World Showcase, such as El Rio de Temple becoming Grand Fiesta Tour, and now obviously Maelstrom has become Frozen, and they're now looking to add Ratatouille to the France Pavilion, I think it's very clear that Disney want there to be a lot more for the whole family to do, but specifically and especially the younger guests to do when they're at Epcot. Now, they did also announce that there is more to come for Epcot, so it's still possible that another pavilion may come, and obviously the current leading pavilion is the Brazilian Pavilion, which I still love saying, Brazilian Pavilion. They also announced that the China Pavilion is also going to be getting a new Circle Vision film. Now, I was quite surprised by this because I honestly didn't think the Circle Vision concept was going to be pushed much further. When it first came out in the late 80s, it was a very new concept and nobody had ever done anything like that before. But now with video technology moving on a lot more and with us now getting 360 cameras more readily available, I didn't think this would be something that Disney would try to push. However, I think it's brilliant that they are keeping those attractions and those classic attractions like that up to date with the newer technology. Now obviously, rather than having a series of screens wrapped all the way around you, they could now have one seamless screen completely around you, which will make that whole Circle Vision concept a lot more immersive. Now, moving back over to Future World, this is where it looks like a lot of the thought and attention is going with regards to updating Epcot. Obviously, the big thing they did, they revealed some artwork with regards to kind of what they envision the new Future World would look like, and it is radically different. It's a lot greener, it's a lot plusher, and there's a lot more kind of futuristic looking buildings, very circular, very kind of modern materials. This is a very big trend at the moment within the architecture world, where you take modern materials and kind of form them in such a way that they look like they're almost organic and they're almost natural. And I think Future World following this trend is very, very on trend, but it's also got a degree of future proofing as well. With regards to Future World getting an update, now I have to be honest, I'm pretty much the same age as Epcot. I was born in 1982. I was born a month after Epcot opened. So I have a huge affinity for the stylization and the message of Epcot. I think people of my age and my generation and people who were born around by that time kind of went through an education system where we were taught to look forward to the future, and we were kind of always, the way that we were taught in school was via the edutainment model, which is how Epcot set itself up. With attractions like Horizons, it had a fun yet educational experience. You know, the Motion Pavilion, again, that had that same mindset. And I think for a lot of people my age with regards to Epcot, there's a great sense of nostalgia. There's lots of kind of colour palettes and lots of design choices and lots of kind of educational styles that were brought in place with Epcot when it was opened, and that have kind of lasted for a long time. So I think the reason why there's a lot of hesitation and a lot of anger towards people when they announce all these new changes coming to Epcot is because I think people feel like they're losing a part of themselves. I know I have a great affinity to the style of Epcot because it does take me back to my youth and when I grew up in the 80s, 90s. And I think that that's going to be a big, scary change for a lot of people. And I think we're going to see a lot of people who are going to be angry about the changes coming to Epcot. Now, that aside, let's get excited and talk about what they are actually building. Because to be fair to Disney, what they have announced does look spectacular. Now, the first one is the one that I'm the least sure about. Now, that's not to say that I'm not happy it's coming. I'm just worried that it doesn't really fit in Epcot. However, Disney did announce that the Universe of Energy Pavilion will be becoming a Guardians of the Galaxy attraction. Now, this was heavily teased, and I did talk about it in my predictions video for D23 that this would get announced. However, I still am surprised that the Guardians of the Galaxy are making their way into Epcot. Now, obviously, Disney have a limitation with regards to what Marvel characters they can use in Walt Disney World due to the contract agreement with Universal Studios. However, it does mean that they can bring characters to the parks that currently don't feature in any of the universes featured in Islands of Adventure. Now, that is a very small and limited list, however the Guardians of the Galaxy are a perfect fit. For me, I do have some overall concerns about whether or not Guardians of the Galaxy fits within Epcot and within the storyline of Epcot. However, I don't know what the storyline of Epcot's going to be by the time they finish with this big overhaul. Now, one thing they did do, which is kind of cute, they talked about how come the Guardians of the Galaxy wanted to return back to Epcot because it was somewhere Star-Lord visited when it originally opened. So there's a bit of a cute backstory that they're building already and a bit of world building around why the Guardians are there, and I can foresee this being a very tenuous link as to how the Guardians fit in. And aside from that, we don't really know what this attraction is going to be, whether or not it's going to reuse the current existing movable theatre system that is currently in the Universe of Energy Pavilion, or whether or not they're going to completely gut it and start from scratch and we're going to have a totally unique or new experience. So I think there'll be more information to come about this attraction in the future as development starts moving forward. Moving along the park, we come to Mission Space, and they announced that there's going to be a new film coming to Mission Space produced by ILM. They also announced that the green version of the attraction is going to have a more family-friendly version. For those people who don't know, there's two versions of Mission Space, the more intense orange mission and the less intense green mission. I personally have never been on the green version. I'm fine with the orange version. I don't get motion sickness and I don't get affected by it. I do think it's great that Disney are looking to still offer these two different versions of the attraction, and the fact that they are updating them and trying to keep them relevant. Mission Space is a great attraction, and I really think it fits in with what Epcot is about. It's about forward thinking, look into the future, and look into what we can achieve, be that on the land, be that in space, or be that in the seas. So to move this attraction forward is great, and I'm all for it. I think now that they've talked about how come potentially the orange version and the green version will be different experiences entirely rather than different intensities, I may be more inclined to want to ride the green version now just to see what that version is. The fact that they're getting two attractions for one is a great benefit to the Disney company. Staying with the Mission Space Pavilion, they have also announced that there's going to be a new space-themed restaurant. The artwork they showed off does look impressive, however the first thing that rang alarm bells with me was, oh great, I'm going to be sat in a restaurant next to giant screens. I was recently on the Disney Fantasy and I loved the concept of the Skyline Bar. I spent hours and hours and a small fortune getting drunk in Skyline. Just for some reason when I'm dining, I don't like the concept of sitting inside a giant box and looking at screens. So me personally, I'm a little bit meh about this one. I'm not convinced it's going to be a stellar thing. However, I'm all for more restaurants coming to Walt Disney World because we all know that it is difficult to make a reservation, and I'm willing to reserve my judgment until I actually see the restaurant built, finished, and maybe even dine there one day. Now, the bigger conversation here is obviously about the direction of Epcot moving forward. I think Disney made no qualms about the fact that they will be changing the general direction of Epcot, especially when it comes to Future World. Now, if you take a look at the artwork that they've released, I've done my best to kind of overlap it with a Google Earth image and with the artwork released, so you can kind of see how things compare and contrast before and after the artwork. Now, the one for me that stood out is the fact that it looks like the Fountain of Nations will be going. It also looks like the famous Fountain View Cafe will also be going. So these are big changes, and we're looking at pretty much a complete redesign of that entire central area of Epcot. However, keeping with the Fountain of Nations concept, if you look further down towards the bottom of the map, there is a giant water area that looks like it's filled with fountains and looks like there is a giant central fountain structure. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if this is going to become the new focus for the Fountain of Nations. And if you look where this sits within the park, this is actually closer between the border of Future World and World Showcase. So it could actually be a nice big central focus for what it could be the central identity of the park. Now, what I do find interesting is that there are a load of fountains here, and these look like much more extravagant fountains as seen in the World of Color show in California. It's a bit of a funny one with this artwork because it shows us the lot but doesn't actually show us anything at the same time. There's no real detail behind any of the images to kind of get you to have a think about this is what this could be changing to. One thing I want to point out, however, is there are a number of locations here that look like they could be attractions. Now, if you look specifically at this one here, this circular building that looks like it's surrounded by trees, this looks like a prime candidate for a potential restaurant, a potential shop, or a potential attraction. And this is quite a large plot of land. It also looks like, and you can just see it here on the corner, that the Odyssey building will be staying. Obviously, Disney love to sell their dining packages and their nighttime packages, so could this potentially be a prime location for a nighttime dining package with a fountain show happening nearby? It does also look like, if you look on the left of the image, there is a big kind of garden area, and it looks like there seems to be some sort of fountains over here as well. There also sneakily cropping on the side of the image is a pavilion that has been cut off, which is roughly where the Land Pavilion is and where the Imagination Pavilion is, but there also looks like there seems to be a bit of a maze-like experience or a bit of a walk-through attraction. So again, could Disney be looking to introduce a complete redesign to the Imagination Pavilion, which has been heavily hinted at, however they didn't announce it at D23. Now, this artwork is a radical change for the currently existing Future World. There's a lot more greenery, there's a lot more open space, and there's a lot more walkways, so a lot more opportunities for them to add intimate, bespoke attraction experiences. Now, one thing I want to touch upon is the fact that the Wonders of Life Pavilion is still in this artwork. So, could this pavilion get redesigned into something new? Or could this pavilion actually reopen with a new concept and new theme moving forward? Obviously, at the moment, the Wonders of Life Pavilion is heavily used for the Food and Drink Festival and the Flower Festival, so they may want to still keep hold of that space. However, with them redesigning all of Future World, it may not be impossible for them to add in a new structure that could be used for seasonal events and maybe gets turned around depending on what is happening in the park at that time of the year. All in all, I'm a massive Epcot fan. Epcot is probably my favourite Walt Disney World park, so I'm quite excited for all these changes to be coming and for the changes they may be announcing. I think Epcot does need a bit of a boost in the arm. It needs something to kind of regenerate it, make it feel like it's an exciting place to visit at the moment. And I think Disney want to move this so that it is trendy and it is modern and forward thinking and it is an exciting destination to visit to. They're also going to want to try to entice people away from the Magic Kingdom. More and more people are choosing the Magic Kingdom over any other park in Walt Disney World, which is causing capacity problems for the Magic Kingdom. So anything that Disney can do to try to entice people to spread their days out, obviously booking maybe rather than just one day in the Magic Kingdom and then going home, they're booking 2 or 3 days in Walt Disney World and visiting the Magic Kingdom, Epcot, Hollywood Studios and Animal Kingdom. They're going to be spreading the load to the guests around the resort. Epcot has a huge capacity, humongous capacity. However, people aren't going there as much because there isn't as much to draw them there as there is in the Magic Kingdom. This is also why the gondola system is also an interesting addition to the resorts. With Star Wars Land coming now to Hollywood Studios and these announced changes for Epcot, Disney are going to be wanting to try and get people around those 3 parks as much as possible. So guys, that's a lot to take in and there's still more to come as well. So please do chime in the comments section. Let me know what you're excited for, what you like, what you don't like, whether you think I'm right as well about whether or not Epcot is more a generational appeal, whether or not it's a more mature park, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. There's a lot to talk about Epcot, so please do chime in the comments section. I'm going to be following this quite closely because, like I say, Epcot is probably my favourite Disney park. So if you want to hear more about my thoughts on Epcot and what I think may or may not be coming, and what I think of future announcements, please do hit that subscribe button because you'll be up to date straight away. If you've enjoyed this particular video, then give it a great big thumbs up because then it lets other people know that you've enjoyed this and they can enjoy it too. So that's a wrap, Magical Travellers. I'm Kieran and I'll see you real soon.